Hello there, I'm Kios the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Takenouchi Manuscripts, the story of humanity never told. So without further ado, let's get into it. This article was written July 17th, 2014 by John Black. The Takenouchi Manuscripts and the Story of Humanity Never Told. The Takenouchi Manuscripts are a set of mysterious documents that were rewritten by a man named Takenouchi no Matari 1500 years ago in a mixture of Japanese and Chinese characters, described as even older texts. According to legend, the original documents were written in divine characters many millennia ago by the gods. The unusual texts tell a story of humanity in a way that has never been told before, starting from the beginning of creation until the emergence of Christianity. They talk of an era in our ancient past where mankind lived in peace and harmony, united under the rule of the sun and a supreme God. The Takenouchi documents are said to be preserved by the Takenouchi family, descendants of Takenouchi no Matari, son of the legendary Japanese hero Takenouchi no Sukune. According to Yamane Keku, in his book, The Authentic History of the World Secreted Away in Japan, the original manuscripts were handed down from generation to generation and kept within the Kosototajigu shrine in Mount Umniji in Toyama Prefecture. It is not clear how Takenouchi no Matari translated the supposedly divine language, but according to modern transcripts, the Takenouchi documents describe the history of all nations in the divine era. They talk of an ancient world which evolved in 4 different periods of time, starting around 300 billion years ago. 7th generations of heavenly gods in the Tenjin era. Each generation has a subgeneration. The Tenjin era, 7 generations. The Joko Kodo era, consisting of 25 generations. The Fakuzai dynasty, consisting of 73 generations, and the Kanyamoto dynasty, which includes the Kanyamato dynasty, which includes 125 generations, starting in 660 BC and continuing to this day. In the beginning, the story goes that the world was a sea of mud, which took 22 billion years to form. The first god and goddesses emerged. The heavens and the earth were separated, and the sun and the moon were created. Gradually, earth took form during a period of 6 generations. In the 5th generation, the gods gave birth to the creator of nations, who descended to Mount Kurai in Japan, dressed in a shiny body. During the period of the 7th generation, various beings developed technologies including transportation and writing, weather control, farming technology, and computers. The seventh generation stated the beginning of a lineage of world emperors, starting with Sumera Makito, an ancient Japanese word. The Takenouchi documents refer to the Sumera Makoto as the son of the sun, since he descended from the sun god. This idea of computers, weather control, transportation, farming technology. If you've listened to my previous episodes of Lounge Ronin, I always stress this idea that none of these technologies that we have discovered over the course of this timeline are discoveries. They're just rediscovered from a much more ancient time. Now, I'm not saying it's being rediscovered during a time in which all these gods populated the earth. I mean, that's up for your own belief system to determine. But what I'm saying is the idea of advanced civilizations prior to ours should be no surprise, especially when various ancient texts describe them and talk about them, and even have witnesses to bear fruit to those technologies and advancements in civilization. Just something to think about when you do your own light studies into these mysteries. For you'll never be surprised at what you discover about the world and yourself. Let's continue. The children of the sun god started the high ancient dynasty, and after 8 billion years, their sons and daughters were sent all over the world to start their own nations. In the Takenouchi documents, the account of human creation does not follow the path of evolution. Rather, it was the gods that created humans, and the sons of gods created 5 types of colored people: white, red, blue, yellow, and black. Blue. Were the Smurfs based on actual people? Let's continue. And scattered them all over the earth. Japan became the center of the world, from where the gods created races and dispersed them outwards. The Kodo era was the womb of the creation of a unified world government under the reign of the first emperor, the Sumera Mikoto. Sumera Mikoto divided the world into 16 regions, with Japan at its center, appointing a king to rule over each region. The crest of the Sumera Mikoto, the 16-petal Chirasaranem, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that one, symbolizes the world and its 16 regions. This crest, known today as the, I'm going to try again, Chirsanthemum flower seal, is still used today as the imperial seal of Japan, a crest used by members of the Japanese imperial family under the Meiji Constitution, 1890 to 1947. I think we all know what happened in 1947. No one was permitted to use the imperial seal except the Emperor of Japan. But the 16-petal has not only been used in Japan, it was also present on the Ishtar Gate of Babylon. A reconstruction using original bricks is now shown in the Pergam Museum, Berlin, at the Alhambra Palace in Spain, and at various locations in Rome, Egypt, and elsewhere. Is it a coincidence, or is there an ancient connection? According to Takenouchi manuscripts, the seat of this world government was located in the Hida Mountains in Japan. Kosokota Ijigu Shrine was the most sacred of all, dedicated to the ancestors of mankind. It is said that the shrine was built with a non-rusting metal called hirokane. According to the Takenouchi documents, all five colored races of humanity visited the shrine to celebrate in an annual festival. The documents state that Sumera Mikoto made frequent tours all around the world. He traveled in a flying vessel called Emeno Ukofune, floating ships. The documents tell us that the places that these vessels landed were named Hain, winds. Many places in Japan have names that include the word Hain. These, according to Takenouchi documents, were ancient landing sites. Even today, one of the Tokyo airports is called Hanada Airport. Now, that reminds me of the Nazca lines in South America. Things are starting to get very kinky when you start being able to connect the dots. Because as you can tell, what we're dealing with here is a manuscript that is, well, I would suggest and speculate, may have been from not post, I would say pre-Diluvian civilizations. That would be my speculation on some of the origins of this manuscript and how it was able to maintain its longevity. If you check out my segment on the Cascadia continent of North America, you'll understand that there were people who survived during these great cataclysms, and especially the one that destroyed the Cascadia continent. Is it no speculation to wonder whether or not this manuscript is from a pre-Diluvian civilization? We know that the temple in Indonesia was constructed pre-Ice Age. What are the chances this manuscript dates back from the pre-Ice Age time of those civilizations? These are things to take in consideration during your own studies. Let's continue. The ancient social system was based on agriculture. People cultivated the land as farmers of the Sumera Mikoto. The land was owned by the gods but administered by the people. Although the land was leased, there was no tax involved. There was no one to control or exploit them. People could enjoy the fruits of their labor. Sumera Mikoto aimed to bring happiness to his people, who in return loved and respected him. However, Sumera Mikoto would decide who would be king of a region and who not. He had the power to add or remove a person based on their governing abilities. This reminds us of accounts given in the ancient Sumerian texts, where the first kings appointed directly by the gods, while the first kings were the gods. The Takenouchi documents also refer to pyramids. According to the documents, they were either human-made structures or human molted hills that Sumera Mikoto would use to communicate with the heavenly gods. The text mentioned the building of numerous Hiramito shrines for the coming of the sun god. The word pyramid is said to be derived from the word Hiramito. Notice sun worship. Who else has worshipped the god? Who else has worshipped the sun? Early Christianity. Look at your origins. It's right here in front of you. Ask yourself, where do these things come from? Ask yourself why there are pyramids in Japan. These are things to consider in your own studies. Let's continue. As with many ancient mythologies, the golden era at some point comes to an end. usually when humans begin to be disobedient to their gods. And this was the case during the Fukazu dynasty, which saw the end of many millennia of peace and prosperity. Catastrophic upheavals caused two continents in the Pacific Ocean, Tamaria and Miyo, to sink into the sea. At the very end of this era, an enormous earthquake caused a 200-meter tsunami that devastated Japan. These disasters were brought on by the corruption of the human spirit. People forgot Sumera Mikoto and became arrogant, provoking the wrath of their gods. One of the most peculiar aspects of the Takenouchi documents is the account of Moses and Jesus, who are both said to have ended up in Japan. Even more surprising is the fact that their supposed tombs can still be visited today. The so-called grave of Jesus is said to have lived up to the age of 106, can be found in the remote mountains of northern Japan, in a strange little town known as Shingo in the Aomori prefecture. The town calls itself Kirisoto no Sato, hometown of Christ. And just a few minutes' drive from the center town is an 8-foot-high wooden cross surrounded by a white picket fence, which sits on a bluff in the woods, overlooking a gravel parking lot. According to the Takenouchi text, Moses too ended up in Japan, where he is said to have lived for 583 years. His supposed grave can be found today at the foot of Mount Hodatsu in Ishikawa Prefecture. Trying to unravel the origins and authenticity of the Takenouchi documents is now an impossible task, as the original manuscripts were allegedly confiscated by government authorities and later lost. As a result, much speculation has circulated regarding the accuracy and indeed the agenda of the Takenouchi texts. Seized by the government and lost. If you really think they're lost, you're being extremely foolish and naive. There is a reason why these documents were confiscated. As like anything, as I've always stated, these types of things would contradict the mainstream narrative. And we can't have that. And how ironic is it that they were in the hands of this clan, of this family, and the next thing you know, they're in the hands of the government? Why? Why were they confiscated by the government? You know, if they're not such a threat, then why confiscate them? What information is within those manuscripts that would completely lead the government to confiscate them and then quote unquote lost? I mean, it's not put in quotation that they lost, but I'm just doing that as a matter of fact because they're not lost. They're just locked away. As I've always said, they don't want you to know the true history, as I like to put it. They don't want you to know the true history, the secret history. Let's continue. According to Ichiro Yamane, grandson of Kiku Yamane, who wrote the book The Authentic History of the World Secreted Away in Japan, the Takenouchi documents were propagandist documents written by the Japanese military to justify the Japanese emperor ruling the world. Remember that according to the Takenouchi documents, humanity started from Japan, and Japan was the center of the world. In the 19th century, Kuyamaro Takenouchi founded an offshoot of the Shinto religion based on the Takenouchi documents. Could the manuscripts have been created to give birth to another religion? Today, the mainstream opinion is that the Takenouchi documents are nothing more than a hoax, and an elaborate one at that. Others maintain that they may have their roots in truth. However, with the original text now missing, it is one mystery that will probably never be solved. And there you have it. A light introduction into the Takenouchi manuscripts. Story of humanity never told. Now, if these documents went missing, if that's the case, like I said, then these documents might have some legitimacy to them. But at the same time, it just might be a limited hangout. It could be, something that's just more of a way to manipulate us. Another thing to throw us off the path. But these are things that we need to keep in mind. And I think I'm going to look into this story about Jesus Christ winding up in Japan. I think that's another thing to further look into. But, with these manuscripts and ancient texts, whether they claim that it's a hoax or it's fake or what have you, somewhere along the line, they always say that these manuscripts or ancient texts, they get lost or confiscated, but they're not real. How does that make sense? How are you going to tell me they were confiscated, but they're not real? Why would the Japanese government confiscate them? And then you're saying it's propaganda because it's claiming Japan was the center of the world. Well, that seems a bit one-sided. We don't really know if they really say that Japan was the center of the world. And if we were to look at it from a standpoint of like Pangea or anything like that, I would wonder if this is just another version of the creation myths that we have covered, whether it's from Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Hindu. I mean, they just seem like the same story being told over and over again, but just either embellished or just sprinkled in with little truths. It's hard to tell sometimes, but this is just something to keep in mind when you do your own research, when you do your studies. That even though they it's just funny to me how they'll say that the manuscripts were confiscated by the government, but they're not real. It's like saying, yeah, are those images of Area 51? And be like, yes. So does Area 51 exist? No, it does not. But what? But that's Area 51. I mean, yeah, but it doesn't exist. It's just that kind of idea. They really play with your mind. It's just it's a weird, sick game that they play. But these kind of things are just add more to the mystery of what our true history is. And this is something really that we all need to not always think about, but just reflect every now and then. Especially when it comes to the propagandization of our governments, of our culture, at the behest of the world governments. These are things to think about when they're rewriting the definitions for the word recession or, you know, I don't even want to say it just to get it, just to be safe. But, when they're rewriting words now, no different than they were rewriting ancient religions to create Christianity. I mean, it's just something to keep in mind. We really don't know the true history of our world. And when we have these little nuggets of mystery and intrigue and speculation and conspiracy, nowadays it used to be, just conspiracy. Now it tends to be conspiracy fact. As asinine as that may sound, lately it seems like the truth has become just as strange as fiction. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love. And it's time for me to get something to eat.